Spectacular on this episode of Words, Images, and Worlds to be talking with science fiction author as well as I'm going to use the word scientist. I think that totally fits here. Adeena Mignogna.
Sure.
Are you accepting scientist? Does that work?
Yeah, it's weird because my original degrees are in science. I have my original degrees. I have one in physics and one in astronomy. But uh,
Hmm.
by work, I'm an engineer. So
Ah,
I'm, so I really it doesn't matter too much. But I guess in the industry and like similar to rocket scientist, I work in
hmm.
aerospace, but I don't usually in the industry call myself a rocket scientist. That's for people who work on the rockets. I work on satellites. So there's just,
I
it
see.
doesn't really matter. Like, I'm not a scientist.
All right, all right. Well, all the professions have these interesting, tiers and
Mhm.
portals that you go through. Like I didn't
Yes.
know before I became a professor the difference between assistant and associate. Well, actually, I think I knew that when I started like a doctoral program, but before that, I really didn't even think about it. I just thought professor
Hmm.
and whatever else goes with it. But it's always interesting. So, author, engineer,
Hmm.
and I'll add in podcaster as well.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Your podcast is the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, is that right?
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah, yeah. So this is comfortable space for you, hopefully.
Hmm.
You're very familiar with the podcasting sphere as well. And if you've seen episodes of the show, you know that I usually ask about the origin story, the connection to the
Hmm.
written word. So I am
Hmm.
curious about that and how the written word in science fiction has become so vital in your life.
Hmm. Well, to some degree, it was always there. My dad was a huge science fiction fan and reader, so I grew up being very well aware of Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, Ray Bradbury. They were on the shelves my entire life,
Mhm.
and I don't know when I really started reading them. And I don't know when I wanted to start also writing stories. Certainly in or by high school ish. But it's so I feel like it's something that's always been there, always been part of my life. So
Nice, yeah.
it's hard to pinpoint very specific moments. It's just was I grew up with it.
I get that. Of
Yeah.
course, writing a robot quartet, you have the Robot Galaxy series.
Hmm.
The first thing I thought of was Asimov, and I was thinking
Hmm.
about that as I read your work. Also, getting notes of, if I may, Douglas Adams. I was feeling
Hmm.
a little Douglas Adams in there, perhaps a little
Excellent.
Pierce Anthony as well, a little of
Hmm.
that as well.
Yep.
So getting some of those influences for sure.
Yeah, and I would say that Douglas Adams, so Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that is my favorite book. It's one of the few
Ah,
that I will reread or re-listen to all the time. And Piers Anthony was also one that my dad was really into, so which meant it was on the bookshelves and it was available to me from a fairly youngish age. So I was
yeah.
always aware also. Yeah. So I'm not
Nice,
surprised if
nice.
if that snuck in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, of course, I'll say you do your own thing. You have
Hmm.
a an interesting protagonist. I believe it's Ruby, is that right?
Hmm. Yep.
And so you have a protagonist that travels through indeed your creation. And though there are notes and hints, I do really feel your work stands on its own as well. So I'll just
Mhm.
share that in addition
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
influences that are there.
Yeah, and that's, I was really trying hard. I love robots of all forms, written robots, robots on screen, robots in real life, everything. So it's for a lot of people who know me, it's not surprising that a lot of the science fiction I write involves robots. But at
Mhm.
first, it was really hard to find, I want to say a little bit of a unique angle because so much has been done. And the original draft that became the Robot Galaxy series, I originally had these robots just kind of invading Earth.
Mhm.
And as I was, writing and rewriting, I'm like, this is stupid. Like that whole idea of extraterrestrials invading Earth, that's been done to death. And I need to do something a little bit more entertaining or interesting. They have to have some other reason for being here other than we're gonna invade and take over Earth. So yes, so I do like to think that I have my own take on robots and things. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was the spark for that? What was the spark for the series? How did you decide I am going to indeed write a book?
Well, so for the longest time, I thought I really could only write short stories. I didn't really think I had a novel in me. Even though several of my short stories, when I had people critique them, they would be like, Adeena, this is not a short story. This is chapter one to a novel. And I was like, oh, but I don't think I can sustain a narrative for a whole novel. Enter NaNoWriMo. So then years ago, so
Hmm.
National Novel Writing Month, I when I learned about it, I was like, okay, let's try this. And the first thing I wrote is terrible. It will never see the light of day. I'm never going to talk about it other than to say that it did get me into this mode of thinking, I'm like, maybe I can sustain a narrative for the length of a novel. So then, not the first NaNoWriMo, but like 2 years later, I wrote what was the first draft that became the Robot Galaxy series. But the spark for it, what really had nothing to do with what you wind up seeing, other than my main character, Ruby. She lives on a space station in the asteroid belt. She's 19, and one of the things she does, she's a pilot. And she was not originally the main character. The original main character was a boy named Ethan, and he was a little younger. He was 17, but then he was a pilot, and the original genesis of the story was because people talk about being a rocket scientist, and I was like, well, let's let's say we were writing a fiction book, how to be a rocket scientist, but it was meant to be kind of silly, like he's just annoyed with other people that think it's easy, that like piloting a ship is easy. That's kind of where it came from. But then as I wrote it, he had a best friend named Stella, and it turned out that like it was so tropey in so many ways to include this 17-year-old kid has a crush on his best friend, and she gets kidnapped by alien robots, and because they do come here, uh, and everything, and like so many things about this was just horrible. And I realized I didn't like Ethan at all because he was just a whiny 17-year-old kid who just had a crush on a girl and no other motivation. But Stella was interesting because she was into computers and very good with computer science and everything. So I dropped Ethan. Stella became Ruby because I realized I didn't like the name Stella. It became Ruby, but then she blended the whole being a pilot and being able to do a lot of fun computer science things. And she is the one that gets, kidnapped by alien robots. So yeah. But it started as a
Cool, cool.
NaNoWriMo, and it couldn't, other than some of my robot characters, like so much of what I originally wrote did not survive into the final.
Yeah, yeah. It's always a process, right? And
Hmm.
it's great to hear that process of how characters come to be. And sometimes you do have to
Yeah.
look at a character and say, sorry, Ethan, I just don't like
Yep. Sorry.
you. You have to
Sorry.
go. It's for the sake of the narrative.
Yes. And I'm glad. I mean, I have no regrets on any of these decisions that I made. I'm very happy with the final product.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, very often, one of the things that I love about science fiction, why it's probably my favorite genre of all, is that, of course, there are elements of science, there are
Mhm.
fascinating ideas, but very often those ideas speak to or mirror life in some way. So I'm curious about what parts of life, what concepts you like to play with as you're crafting your narratives.
Mhm. Well, in this series in particular, because Ruby, my main character, she is very good with programming and stuff. I am using it as a little bit of an excuse to be semi-educational on certain topics in the computer science
Hmm.
realm for anyone who chooses to see that. I mean, like you don't have to pick up on that to enjoy the book, but for anyone who chooses to see that, that's there. I also try very hard where if there's anything like astronomy, physics related that I can do to be correct or as correct as we know, I will try to do that. And it won't always be obvious, some of the work I did, like looking up, so this space station is in the middle of the asteroid belt. but looking up during like the dates that I've selected for the story, there are some uh, like I would say astronomy calculators online that will do like where are the planets into
Hmm.
the future, we can project in the future because it matters because if you are out in the asteroid belt and then you're thinking about planets like Jupiter and Saturn, are they could be both on the same side of the sun or on opposite sides of the sun. And it matters because I wanted my space station to be kind of near-ish where Saturn is at the time. Again, no one like other than I feel like me would know this. Because it's not obvious. But then and then other things like the space station spins to give half gravity. So I calculated it to make sure it's like the right size. So I don't talk about the size of it in the book, but the fact that I kind of have it, so I know how big it is, so I know where things can kind of be. But I do mention that the station it offers about half gravity there because that comes up as a thing because that's what Ruby is used to. So she's not used to full gravity. But the fact that I've calculated the right size and so I can think of things fitting and sort of have a design, like no one's going to know that other than when we have these conversations.
Yeah, yeah, very, very cool. I love the educational aspect, but it's part of the fabric of it.
Mhm.
So I love how you work to integrate that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
fun. And I do that with I don't want to say with everything I write, but certainly with this series for sure.
Yeah, yeah. That maybe partially answers the question, but for people that are sort of new to science fiction
Mhm.
or that are exploring it, uh, how important is the science to science fiction? I'm assuming the answers vary.
Well, see, I'm actually the person who says, maybe not so much. So for
Oh, cool.
me, it's actually more important that the story itself is engaging, and I think that the universe is self-consistent.
Mhm, mhm,
It's when
mhm,
the universe breaks its own rule that you build, it breaks its own rules. That's when things get wonky. But if you set up a universe where this is just the way it is, then we accept it. Like if you take, I always use Star Trek and Star Wars as examples in these things. So Star Trek, they are going the speed of light, they have warp drive, and as long as they're self-consistent now with what they've done with that, all is good, even though there is no true real science to back it up.
mhm,
Similarly,
mhm,
Star Wars, which I know a lot of people do criticize and say it's really fantasy, sure, and if people want to label it, sure, but the fact is, within their own universe, with like the how the ships and everything work, they are self-consistent. Ships have hyperdrive. They don't explain where it comes from or whatever, but they just have it, and we move on. So similarly in the Robot Galaxy series. So the way I've done it is I am projecting out like a couple hundred years in the future from us. And like we humans, we don't have like any kind of faster than light technology. But now here's this
mhm.
alien species, these alien robots, they do. I don't
Yeah.
explain it. They just do. Done. And we don't go into it. And it's okay as long as I think it's self-consistent within the thing. For people who only want science fiction to be a projection of what we really know, I mean, sure, you can do that, and a lot of science fiction authors do that. That is traditionally what people will call hard science fiction, and usually they'll associate like with Arthur C. Clarke. Although I will maintain that once he brings in aliens, he has broken his hard science fiction. Like, you
Mhm,
know,
mhm,
that's not hard science fiction because we have no proof or anything that aliens exist. So that does not come out of real science. So as long as though then the story is consistent, and I've talked to several over the years people who are science consultants on movies and television shows. And what they often will say, one of the questions they get asked frequently is, how do you feel when you've given, your feedback and they ignore it? And most of them are like, yeah, no, like the story comes first. The science is second. If
mhm,
they happen to get the science right, that's cool. And so to me, it is like, does the story work? Does the narrative work or not? A movie like Gravity got a lot of sciencey things, a lot of the details in space wrong, but it was a great movie, a great narrative. Like, and so I love that movie, even though, and so I'm like, I'm okay that they did some things to make the story work. I'm okay with that, you know. And the thing is what it really does is for people who are interested in the real science, it gives them a reason to kind of like look into it. You know, you see a
Right.
movie and you're like, I wonder if that's real or not. So it doesn't matter if the movie is real or not. It's like the fact that it gets you wondering and talking about it and then discovering the real science. That's cool. And so gravity has done a lot of that. A lot of people have learned a few facts about how debris and orbits and things work because of gravity. Yeah.
Um, I also think about Jules Verne, so
Hmm.
predictive of so many technologies.
Hmm.
Isaac Asimov, again, predictive of so much in the world
Hmm.
of AI. So there is that vision prediction, not quite yet, but wouldn't it be cool if aspect of
Hmm.
science fiction too?
Yeah. And I have a little bit of that happening in my other novel, Lunar Logic. So it's completely separate from the Robot Galaxy series. It's a standalone novel right now. In fact, there's a picture of it right behind me.
I
It's a
see that. I see
standalone novel right now, although I'm working on the sequel. And what's interesting is so it takes place about 100 years from now on the surface of the moon. And there's robots and AI, they're there, and they don't know anything about humans or that humans created them. But the thing is one of the things that I have happening there is there are data centers on the moon. So in a lot of regions in our country, we're seeing data centers pop up. And for several years on my commute to my day job, yep, I just kept watching these data centers pop up and thinking about how all the trees that got knocked down and how much heat they're putting into the environment. And I started thinking about, it would be cool if it was located on the moon. And the funny thing is, in this last year, especially with people being concerned with the usage of, AI and how much energy and how much heat it's producing and all that stuff, I've seen a couple articles about people talking about data centers on the moon or in lunar orbit. And I'm like, hey, I wrote a book about that a few years ago already.
nice.
Yeah,
Nice. Yeah, that's got to be rewarding in its own way
a little
to
bit.
to
Yeah.
get to say, "Hey, I thought about that."
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Well, glad to hear you're working on a second book in Lunar Logic in that series as well. I
Yeah.
will, of course, make sure there's a nice cover of it in front of us as well as we're talking
Thank
about
you.
it. Yeah, so I guess the next questions have more to do with like where we find your work.
Mhm.
Anything that you'd like to say about the inspiration for the Kickstarter campaign that you're on?
Yeah. So the Kickstarter is to turn the Robot Galaxy series into audiobooks. And I have a narrator, Stephanie Chizowski. She's an actress. I know her as Lieutenant Tavine from Star Trek Picard. She was a
Oh,
bald
uh-huh.
Vulcan on the bridge in season 3 for several episodes until spoiler alert, she was killed. Uh, so through my podcast, I've gotten to know her and several other Star Trek actors, and I wanted there to be audiobooks. And when I was thinking through about choosing a narrator, I was like, I know a few Star Trek actors. I wonder if like one, do I feel comfortable asking any of them? And two, would they be the right person for the book? And actually, I'd already done this. Lunar Logic is an audiobook, and it's narrated by Bruce Horak, who played Engineer Hemmer in Strange New Worlds. He was the Andorian chief engineer in season 1 of Strange New Worlds. And the same thing. It was like when I was doing the audio for that, I was like, I wonder, because I know these people, like, is there someone, it's a combination of I'm comfortable asking and would they be right for the book? And Bruce was the first person who came to mind for Lunar Logic, and um, he was happy to do it. He's actually like 91% blind, so audiobooks are very meaningful to him. He listens to them. So he was happy to do it, and it came out great. I'm so thrilled. So, but now I wanted to do this one as a Kickstarter because I'm curious about Kickstarter as a platform to see how well it works and everything. So yeah, it's to fund the audiobooks, but most of the rewards involve new books in the Robot Galaxy series universe. So, which I was already doing. And honestly, if the Kickstarter doesn't fund, I'm still putting those books out. It's just if the Kickstarter does fund, we get audio, and then there's other rewards involved, like Tuckerization and all kinds of other fun things.
Cool, yeah. Speaking of the podcast, where
Mhm.
can we find the podcast? And any guests that you'd like to mention, either that you've had or that you'll be showcasing soon?
Sure. Well, the Big Sci-Fi podcast, it's available on whatever platform, your Spotify, Apple, Amazon, whatever platform. But you could also go to trekgeeks.com. We're part of the Trek Geeks network, and you can find our podcast and the other podcasts in the Trek Geeks network. All there, we're all there. And as for guests, so we love to do both. We have on-screen actors, but we have behind the screen, behind stage people, which is also amazing. As someone who is not in the film and TV industry, I learn so much every time I talk to somebody who was either a director, special effects. We've had a puppeteer on recently this earlier this year, Dave Barclay, who he controlled Yoda's eyes and part of Jabba the Hutt. He was a master puppeteer on Star Wars, and so learning about all these things is just fascinating. We had an astronaut on. We've had several other science fiction authors like John Scalzi, Andy Weir, several of the Star Trek tie-in authors. So many. Yeah, we've had many. Although we're not exclusively an interview show. We do
Hmm.
kind of alternate interviews, and we're just me and my co-host are talking about a science fiction film, a science fiction series, a science fiction book, just some science fiction topic. So we cover it all. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Well, I could go down a rabbit trail of asking about your favorite this and your favorite that, and if you're seeing Strange New Worlds,
Hmm.
season three, and all of those things.
Yes,
But
and we just actually had Melissa Navia, who plays Erica Ortegas. That was the episode, one of our episodes that came out recently on the podcast.
love it, love it. Awesome. I'm a fan even of the musical episode. I know that
I
some
love the
people might
musical
find it
episode.
divisive, but love it, love it. Yeah,
hmm I love that, and
yeah.
I love the one where they did the crossover with Lower Decks. That is
Hmm.
by far my favorite episode of the series so far.
Yeah, yeah. They are getting creative. I really enjoy that.
Mhm.
Uh, well, back to the Robot Galaxy series. Where can I go find more about you? Where can I support conventions, online spaces other than those we've already mentioned, or anything else that you'd like to tag in?
Sure. Well, my books are on all the platforms, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, everywhere. But the best place to just find all the things is to start with my website, adeenam.com, ADEENAM.com. And I have my own bookstore. You can buy your books directly from me, which is outside of a convention that I'm at. That's the only place to get autographed copies of my paperbacks is through my website. And you can, again, find me all the other places. You'll see a link to the podcast there. Um, I'm active on social media. I'm mostly active on Facebook, although I'm on other platforms too. Facebook is probably my primary, and LinkedIn, because I do talk a lot about engineering-ish things. So if anyone who's
Yes, yes.
listening is interested in that side, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well.
Well, I really enjoy talking with people that have their hands in a variety of creative endeavors, so that certainly sounds to be the case.
That's me.
Uh, yeah, yeah. Glad to talk through the work, glad to talk science fiction anytime, and certainly glad to have you back.